Hey everybody, it's your favorite Them Fatale, Jinx Oge, and the highly anticipated Pink Friday 2 is out now, and I wanted to share my honest thoughts on the sequel to one of our fan favorite albums. Before we get into it, I'm a Nicki Minaj fan. My favorite Nicki album is Roman Reloaded, and I'll be giving my honest opinion on the good, bad, and beyond that is Pink Friday 2. Translation: Barbs, please don't come for me if I say something you disagree with. So first off, Pink Friday 1 is a flawless jam. Like Nicki said, you don't gotta skip a track. But does the same hold for Pink Friday 2? So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with the first track, Are You Gone Already? Narratively, it feels like a follow-up to Pink Friday 1's Dear Old Nicki, very much bringing things full circle to where Nicki is in her life now, which I like. However, when you take tracks like Calm Down and Blessings, they kind of evoke similar narratives and all start to feel redundant. And while I love Tasha Cobbs Leonard's gospel verse on Blessings, I would have merged some of the ideas from each of these songs together into one, because as the album goes on, we end up getting quantity versus quality issues the more you listen to the tracks. Next is Barbie Dangerous, which is classic Nicki. The song has a very catchy piano beat too, and on top of that, the song really showcases how unmatched Nicki's rap ability is. The next song I want to talk about is Nicki Hendrix. It's an interesting song. Nicki sounds great on it, although I think Future should have been swapped out with someone like Drake on this track, given this type of sound Drake excels at. Speaking of Drake, he returns for Pink Friday 2 in the song Needle. And while I enjoy this sci-fi island vibe of a song, I gotta say, it doesn't hold a candle to the original Pink Friday bop Moment for Life. And with Rihanna missing from Pink Friday 2, you could have easily imagined if the Barbados Queen returned to Pink Friday on a version of this track. Speaking of island jams, Forward from Trini is a big swing, although I can't help but feel she did a much better job going this direction with Sean Kingston on Dirty Love. With that said, Skilbing and Skeng, I hope I'm saying that right, sound great on the track. As a Jamaican, I have to put this song in the meh category. And other songs that fall in the meh category but aren't exactly bad are Cowgirl. It's not bad, it's a flirty, dreamy song that's just there. Along with Falling For You, which isn't a bad song, although feels pretty redundant and feels like territory and sounds we've already visited with Nicki already, and unnecessarily adds another in the Dreamy Days category of tracks on the album. Pink Birthday is in a similar case. I wanna like the track more. The ingredients are there. I think what it is the levels of the song that create an imbalance, making it seem like Nicki's vocals are taking a back seat to the music. Next, we're going to cover the tracks that didn't sit right with me on this particular body of work. Beep Beep and Big Difference are harder tracks, and despite them being surprisingly short songs, they energetically don't fit what I imagine Pink Friday to be. Also, Bam Bam and FTCU are easily the worst songs on the record. If it were me, I would have cut them to help with the quality versus quantity control the album kinda suffers for. The song Just Memories is a perfect end to the album and a great epilogue to both Pink Friday eras on Nicki telling her story. It's a nice song and really wraps it close to the story, whether this is the last Pink Friday or not. The songs Red Ruby Da Sleaze, Everybody, Pink Friday Girls, and My Life are fun bops, but the album suffers from sampling too many tracks, especially after following up after Super Freaky Girl. With the exception of My Life, I question if some of these tracks would have even worked if they haven't relied so heavily on their original sources. Also, I felt the album should have opened with Pink Friday Girls, and this really should have set the tone for the project, in my opinion at least. And you can guarantee everybody is going to explode on TikTok. With that said, here are some tracks that I really feel live up to the Pink Friday legacy. Number 1, Super Freaky Girl. It's the anaconda of this record, and yes, it's another sample track, but it's easily the best bop on the entire album, which is a highlight and a downside, because the rest of the album struggles to stay on this high of a level, and with that being the lead single, it set an expectation that I felt the album didn't 100% deliver on. Next is my favorite, and it's Last Time I Saw You. It feels right on par with the classic Right Through Me. It's a vulnerable vibe and a whole imperfect mood that many of us can relate to. And this is without a doubt my favorite song on the album. And time of recording, I really hope it gets a music video. While the album has its solid tracks, it also has more songs that are unneeded and don't live up to the original Pink Friday legacy. I understand that this was never going to be a one-for-one of the original Pink Friday. Nicki's a different artist now, telling a different story. It's just the album's energy is tonally different and isn't the same as Pink Friday, nor is it as solid of a body of work. The best way I can describe this is Pink Friday 1 felt like it was for the club scene and the girls and the gays, whereas Pink Friday 2 felt like it was for the club scene, for the girls, gays, and a bunch of straight guys got let in, and the whole mood shifted. You can also see this reflected in the feature artist. Pink Friday 1's featured artists had Eminem, Rihanna, Drake, will.i.am, Kanye, and Natasha Bedingfield, whereas Pink Friday 2 had J. Cole, Lil Wayne, Tate Kobang, Drake, Lords, Lil Uzi Vert, Skilly Bang, Skang, Future, and Tasha Cobbs Leonard. And each of these groups of featured artists really paints a different direction for each of their respective albums. On top of the fact that Pink Friday comes along with a certain set of expectations connected to it. PF1 is very playful, wide-eyed, ambitious Nicki who's the underdog and is also the perfect balance between mainstream pop and rap. While Pink Friday 2, Nicki is Queen, who's lost and loved again and trying to find her way back to her old self. PF2 has a stronger emphasis on rap, dreamy music, moody music, and even haunting tracks, with some pop samples heavily sprinkled in, which don't always fit the vibe of Pink Friday. And despite PF1 having less songs, it feels more like a complete experience and body of work compared to PF2. And here comes my most controversial take of this video. Nicki Minaj is at her best as a rap pop star. Not to mention, she can do many different genres with rap. It's the very reason why so many women rappers have entered the game and tried to replicate her sound and style. And since her second album, Roman Reloaded, many straight dudes have outright shamed Nicki out of her pop DNA, saying it makes her less of a rapper, while simultaneously boosting up and awarding artists like Latto, Doja Cat, and Cardi B for the exact same original Popnika sound. Heck, Doja Cat's Hot Pink album feels more like a follow-up to Pink Friday than Pink Friday 2 does. And my issue with that is that you have Nicki writing so many songs about other girls biting off her sound while also simultaneously shying away from pop and dance music in her rap. So another issue I have with Nicki's music that shows up on Pink Friday 2 a little bit is the constant making jabs and tit for tats with other artists who are really non-factors to be worried about or to give them that kind of attention or platform. Because let's be real, most of these artists are unknowns, and whether they've collaborated with Nicki or beef with Nicki, it kind of benefits them because nobody knew who they were beforehand. And personally, at this point, I'm surprised she hasn't had an all-out anthem-level diss track and mic drop moment. Think of like Gwen Stefani's Holler Back Girl, or Destiny's Child Survivor, or Mariah Carey's Obsessed, or Taylor Swift's Bad Blood, or heck, even Justin Timberlake's Cry Me a River. Like, we need a mic drop moment that hits harder than Stupid Ho. Like, if we're gonna do this, let's do this so everybody can bop to this and they can even use it against their own nemesis. And at the same time, the desired target receives the message. I don't know, call me old-fashioned, it's the subs I just don't care for. And I want to be clear about this, nobody is saying Nicki can't do hard rap, moody tracks, or even diss tracks. What I'm saying is the original Pink Friday, for many of us, represents something very different than what Pink Friday 2 gave us. Personally, my expectations were very high for this album, between the first two singles being 100% worthy successors to Pink Friday 1, and Pink Friday 2 being the follow-up to the perfect Pink Friday 1 era. I guess I was expecting to be transported back to Nicki's 2010 sound and energy with more of a modern day spin, and Pink Friday 2 isn't that despite the first singles really sparkling and being 100% on brand. And listening to the two side by side, I prefer Pink Friday 1. Does that make Pink Friday 2 a bad record? Of course not, and I think we all can take that for what it is. Nicki's a very personal writer, so it's going to come out in her music. With that said, here's to hoping this era brings Nicki back to her high energy best self and reflects more on her music going forward. As a final grade, I'm giving Pink Friday 2 a C+. Me, Jinx, signing out.